Hello and welcome to the very last video of our bike build series. We're almost done with this thing. The last thing we have to do is wrap the handlebars, and then we're just going to make a couple of small adjustments to make sure that the bike is set and ready to ride. Wrapping handlebars is sort of a skill, it's sort of an art. To do it well takes patience and practice. So I'm going to try to show you some pointers for making it as easy as possible. This is going to be made even more complicated by the fact that we are actually reusing our old tape. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we wrap the handlebars, we want to clean up where our cables are running. So I'm going to be using just standard electrical tape to tape down the cables and housing all the way along the length of our handlebar. We are now ready to wrap our handlebars. One of the keys to wrapping handlebars well is making sure that you are prepared. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that our cables are taped down neatly underneath where our tape is going to go. That's just going to make our life a lot easier. We also want to have finishing tape handy. So I'm just using regular old electrical tape, but I always like to start with a tab of this and hang it from my stem on the opposite edge from where I'm going to be finishing my wrap. That way I've got my finishing tape ready and I've got my scissors at hand and ready to go. On this side of the bars, we've got the bar end shifter, so we're not going to be using a bar end plug, but we do need a plug for the left hand side of the bars. We're going to go ahead and start on the right side and then move to the left. There are some different methods for finishing around your brake levers, but in this case I'm going to be using these small pieces that came with our tape to cover up the band along the back of our brake lever. These should have some adhesive on them, but if they don't, I can hold them in place and then put a thin loop of electrical tape just kind of hanging on the edge here to hold them down. We are going to remove this later. So we're going to leave a little tab hanging off the edge. Don't forget to hold on to your finishing tape where you're going to need it. Okay, when we wrap handlebars, the idea is to keep a steady and even wrap of our handlebar tape all the way up and around to the end. This gets tricky in two places specifically. Anywhere where you have a curve, because you're going to be going around a shorter curve on the inside and a longer curve on the outside, and then of course around the edges of our brake lever, because we want to make sure we have full coverage of our handlebar even though we're wrapping around this brake lever. We're going to start with the unperforated end of our handlebar tape, and we always start at the bottom of the handlebar facing inward toward the bike. So I place my wrap at the bottom of the handlebar. I'm placing it actually under the cable housing for my shifter for the moment. We're going to go over on the next wrap, and we're going to do one wrap all the way around the handlebar. Okay, we're not overlapping and starting to go. So we go all the way around until we start to see our perforated end of our handlebar tape. Then we are going to start angling our handlebar tape at an angle. The idea is for each wrap of handlebar tape to cover about a quarter of the previous wrap. So here I've wrapped around and I've covered just about a quarter of my tape on my next wrap. I'm going to continue to do that as I go through. And I'm using the perforations on the tape to kind of act as markers. So I'm trying to get the edge of each wrap to overlap the last row of perforations on the tape. Now this is a leather handlebar tape, so I can pull really, really tight on the tape as I wrap around. With a cork style tape, you don't want to pull too hard or else you will tear the tape. And you also don't want the tape stretched out. Okay, this leather tape doesn't actually have much stretch to it, so I'm pulling very, very tight. And as I make each wrap, I'm kind of twisting the wraps that are already there to get out any slack in our wrap. And this tape is pretty bomb proof. It will last a lifetime so long as you're not in a terrible accident in which you scuff up your handlebar tape. Now, one thing to be cautious of is as you come around this turn, the outer loops are going to start being wider than the inner loops. So you want to make sure that you're getting your overlap on the outside as well as on the inside. And it's common to miss the overlap on the outside. So we're paying extra close attention there. As I approach my brake lever, I want to come up under the edge of the brake lever here and overlap the brake lever just a little bit. So I'm going to bring my tape around and I'm going to come in and overlap just a tiny bit underneath the brake lever. I'm going to pull tight and then I'm going to cross over the back of the brake lever and bring the tape up and over the top like so. And I've created just a little X around the back of the brake lever. I can continue wrapping, making sure that I have my overlap through. And again, we're coming around a tight turn here, so I need to be extra cautious around the outside that my overlap is occurring. And we made it through this outer portion without having any gaps. Now, if you note, the edge of my handlebar tape is cut. Now this was already cut from before, but if it weren't, I would want to cut the tape in a perpendicular line to the handlebar. So I would sight from a perpendicular on the handlebar and cut through my tape like this. What that does is it gives the tape a nice square edge when you finish it off on the handlebar. I'm going to wrap once more. That gives us our nice square edge along here. And I'm going to take my finishing tape, which I already have prepared, and I'm going to tape over the tape. And in this case, I kind of have to fudge it a little bit. I'm putting my finishing tape halfway on the edge of the tape and halfway on the handlebar. My tape was just a little bit short, but we're going to use this finishing tape with several wraps around to make it look nice and neat. And then I always cut my tape so that the cut end tucks underneath the handlebar and you won't see the seam of the cut. Finally, I can remove the tape that I used to hold my small piece around the back of the brake lever, and I can fold down my brake hood, and there we have it. We are all set for our right side. Okay, so on this left side, the one thing that we need to realize is we need a bar end plug. And typically these bar end plugs actually have a loose fit on the bar end. So what we're gonna do when we begin the wrap on this side is we're going to overhang our tape. And usually I overhang about 1/3 of the width of the tape. However, here, since it's a leather tape and it's a little bit thicker and a little less pliable, I'm only gonna overhang about 1/4 of the tape. What's gonna happen is once we have that first wrap, we're gonna be able to tuck in the tape and put the bar end plug in to kind of hold everything tucked in. Now, I'm not gonna do that until the bars are all the way taped. So we'll do the same thing on this side as we did on the other side, but this time leaving a little overhang of our tape over the edge before we put the bar end plug in. Okay, we're gonna do this in fast motion in the interest of time. Okay, so I've just finished off this side, and we want to match it as best as we can to the right side here. So what I'm actually going to do is measure how far I am from my faceplate of my stem to the edge of my bar tape. And here we are at about 48 millimeters, and on this side we're at about 44 or 45 if I have that tape wrapped completely around. So what we're gonna actually do is we're gonna take about 4 millimeters off of the edge of this side to match it up as best as we possibly can. And again, we wanna be cutting perpendicular to the bar. And there we are on 48 millimeters exactly. So really matching up the sides if you want to be pro about it. I'm going to take my finishing tape, and just like I did here, I'm going to go about halfway on and halfway off the bar tape with my finishing tape. And once we've finished there, we're going to put in our bar end plug. So I need to tuck in any excess tape from the back of the bar. We're going to make sure the bar end plug, if it has any writing on it, can be read right side up. This has a K on it. It's actually a Physique bar end plug that I'm using with Brooks tape, but that's okay. And we're going to tap it into place. Nice and neat. Sometimes you might have a little tab of your bar tape hanging out. In that case, you can take a flathead screwdriver and tuck it under. And it should look nice and clean when you are done. Now, those are just a little few tricks to show you how to do this correctly and well, but really it takes years and years of practice to be really good at getting your handlebar tape wrapped cleanly and neatly every single time.